Hello and welcome to the course on Introduction to Data Analytics. On behalf of Commonwealth Educational Media Asia, I welcome you all to the course and wish that you all have a very productive learning. I am hopeful that upon completion of this course, you shall enrich yourself as a data scientist and shall be equipped professionally as well as from the perspective of building your career on a very solid foundation to charter your course of path as a data scientist. Let me take this opportunity of briefly introducing you to the course before we move into the granularity of the foundation of data science and data analytics. I will take you through a journey of how we can understand what data science and data analytics offers you in terms of not only as a new vista in knowledge, but also as a foundation in your career, something that you would be happy to have acquired as a result of subscribing for this course. Let me start with a small anecdote. I'm sure you know this country. This is on the furthest east in our globe, and this country is Japan. Now, if you recollect your elementary school level knowledge on geography, you would realize that Japan is composed of 4 major islands. They are Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. These 4 islands are further subdivided into almost 10,000 combs or prefectures. Each prefecture is in reality a small administrative unit which is governed by the local administration. Now, if you are accustomed in knowing the geography and in knowing the way that Japan is governed and ruled, I am sure you also must be knowing that Japanese are known for their discerning tests. And what you see before you right now is something that is very popular in Japanese culture, and this is called a bento box. Bento in Japanese language stands for lunch boxes, and a Japanese usually prefers to have different bento boxes depending on the time of the day. So there is a special menu which is usually preset for their breakfast, and subsequently another menu for lunch, and then there is altogether very different menu for dinner. Now remember, as I mentioned, Japan is further subdivided into these 4 islands are further subdivided into 10,000 combs or prefectures. Each prefecture is known for its distinctive cuisine preferences. So if you are in Sendai, you are almost sure that the tastes and preferences for the people in the city would be very different when you are traveling to Nagasaki, or you are traveling to Fukuoka, or you are traveling to the capital Tokyo. And to cater to all these, when I look at the 7-Eleven store which has been incorporated in Japan, ensures that the bento boxes are different at different times of the day, at different seasons of the year, at different years of the month and days of the week, and it is different as you travel across from Hokkaido to Honshu to Shikoku to Kyushu. The beauty is, how do they manage this huge variability in terms of taste and preferences? It is because that they know exactly city-wise, comb-wise or prefecture-wise, island-wise, how the tastes, choice and preferences vary. They have heavily invested in capturing the data at the point of the sale, and accordingly they have used this data to recalibrate their information technology architecture, which is further synchronized to their supply chain and value networks, which ensures that all the 4 different islands of the city actually are catered to the cuisine of their tastes and preferences. Let me tell you the concluding part of this story in 7-Eleven. They have not limited themselves in investing in just to know the tastes and preferences. In 2021, just after the pandemic has eased a bit and the global economy was reopening, 7-Eleven again invested money in market research to try and gauge consumer sentiments. And as you might be knowing, across the world and particularly in some of the economies like United States, consumer sentiments did hit the rock bottom. People were depressed, they were frustrated, many were out of jobs. In order to understand what would motivate their spirits and what would elevate them to work further on improving their conditions, 7-Eleven started a campaign which is labeled as Take It to 11, which is essentially built on their core philosophy is feed people's joy, make them happy. And then again they are looking at how they can use data productively to understand that across the 50 different states in United States of America, how does the choice, tastes and preferences differ as you move across the 12,000 odd stores that is present on the length and breadth of the country, and what exactly excites American customers in terms of their food preferences as they come out of their home and starts working for a living in order to beat the blues of COVID-19. Let me tell you another story which would help you to understand the significance and importance of data. It was the 70s when again the world of fashion was spreading its wings across North America and Europe. And here in this story, it is about a small quaint town in northwestern Spain where a gentleman spent almost his fortune in preparing for an order for a German buyer, and overnight the order was cancelled. So in a desperate move to recover whatever he has spent and invested in manufacturing of the garments, he thought of opening a store just in front of his small factory, and he named his store Zara. The rest is history. Today, Amancio Ortega is arguably one of the most richest industrialists and entrepreneurs of our times. But the story doesn't end here. What is more fascinating about this story is a business philosophy which Amancio Ortega believes, and it is a part of the Inditex Apparel, the umbrella brand which owns many other apparel and fashion wares including Zara. Core philosophy is keep 5 fingers on the factory and keep 5 fingers on your customers, and don't lose sight on these 5 plus 5, 10 fingers till your products get sold and they are consumed, which literally translates that at every touch point in the ecosystem from manufacturing to the consumer, you keep a track of every single piece of information, every data that is generated. You archive that, you synthesize that, you adapt that to the requirements of your manufacturing process and the supply chain, and accordingly you redesign in the best possible manner, in the most optimized manner, which would help not only your consumers to get the right product at the right time, but would also help improve on the profitability of your company and the bottom line. And arguably, this company has been benchmarked as one of the leading textile and apparel supply chain manufacturer in the country, which has been an excellent case study in terms of how they use their data productively, how they mine their data, how they analyze their data, and arguably how they interpret their data meaningfully to gain the most and the successful competitive advantage that is possible. There is one central tenet in terms of data. If you cannot measure, you cannot manage. And what are the consequences when you have a mismanaged data? Gartner research reveals that if you have a poor data quality, all the initiatives, all the efforts, all the endeavors that you strive to get business excellence are wasted. 2/3 of the organization in this world, and many of them, they spend majority of their time on data related tasks, cleaning data, sorting data, figuring out which data to be kept and which data to be removed. But what they don't exactly do is the task of analyzing the data meaningfully, gainfully, productively, because they lack access to a consistent supply of company information. What you see here is an empty rack in a retail store. If you read the shelf sticker, it says that the store has run out of bread. And let me tell you, stock obsolescence is a cardinal offense. No retailer ever in this world has been pardoned. If a customer walks out, he walks out, takes my words for granted, he walks out forever. He would probably not once again come back to see if the product that he is looking for has been replenished. So there is no room, there is no place for any complacency in this hyper-competitive business environment that we are facing today. In contrast, if you have a happy customer, if the customer is able to locate the product that he is looking forward from his or her store visit, I am sure the customer would keep coming back to you. Now, what is the difference for a customer who walks out of your store and the customer who is happy, a customer who keeps on visiting your store? I think the implication is what is the foundation for our knowledge in data analytics. Now, what we know about a customer is superficial, maybe just the top 20% of the iceberg that you can see here. What you do not know about your customer is the remaining 80%. And herein lies the significance as to why we need to understand, why we need to practice and profess an elementary knowledge in data sciences. I am extremely glad and happy that you decided to choose, and I am sure as we unfold the new vista of knowledge in data science, you would be more than happy to see how we have been gainfully able to employ these data, these bits and pieces of information into not only knowledge, but into wisdom which you can develop for your own productive and useful purpose. Now, how do we make sense of this raw data? We get data from the customer information reports, we get data at the point of sale terminal, we get data by social listening on different social media handles, we get data from the footprints that the customer leaves behind as the customer toggles between different tabs and moves from one URL to another. I think there are a variety of ways by which we acquire data. But the question here is not data acquisition. We are actually, I think, relying on not only gigabytes or megabytes of data, we are relying on petabytes of data. But the more critical question here is, how do we translate this data into meaningful insight for us? I think that is the purpose, that is the foundation on which the course is built on. So, my dear friends, it actually is a function of the degree of intelligence that you are looking from a data vis-a-vis how much business value that we seek to generate from this data that we are going to analyze. So we start with very basic standard information, and that is perhaps a function of our understanding as to what has happened in business. So if we start from there, and if we slowly graduate to how many times this event has occurred, that a customer has walked out because there is a product obsolescence, or how often does this happen, maybe it just happened once in a week or once in a month, or if it is happening more frequently, I think there is a reason for us to flag this concern. And then where it has happened. Has it happened in store A? Has it happened in a certain geography like Malaysia or like Singapore or like India? Or has it happened across the world? So we need to understand how many, how often, where. And from there, we now need to identify the root cause of this problem. We have to drill down to that basic. So there is a query drill down or an OLAP. And this would yield into giving you some alerts. These alerts are basically what actions are needed on your part to help you evade those not so welcome consequences of store walkouts by a customer. So we need to generate these alerts. And then subsequently, the next stage is we need to drill down why this is happening. And what happens if these trends continue? So now we employ certain mathematical techniques to understand the historical evolution of these. So we might look at the time series data, we might look at developing some polynomials to understand what would happen in the future, so some kind of forecasting that happens. And then the next level is we need to understand what will happen next. So from forecasting, we should be able to do some kind of prediction. If this is the trend, this might happen. But ultimately, our design is to what best can happen. Given all these considerations, how we can best design the business ecosystem so that it does not happen. So as I mentioned, so it would certainly depend on how much we are going to invest in terms of our money and effort in trying to understand how much value, because each of these actions that I am talking about would generate certain amount of business value with respect to the level of intelligence that I am graduating from one level to another. So essentially, if you look at the Gartner Analytics Ascendancy model, we move from developing a hindsight to developing an insight and subsequently developing a foresight based on the degree of information optimization that we are trying to seek. So from what happened to why did it happen to what will happen, and then how can we make it happen otherwise in a more positive sense based on, as I mentioned, how much business value that you are looking for from the process vis-a-vis how much difficulty or how much degree of complexity of information processing that the process calls for. So I think we move forward from having a kind of reactive hindsight mindset to more of optimization foresight mindset, and subsequently let me tell you that now in the contemporary world we have moved further and we also are trying to analyze that what I don't know. This is all based on what I have known so far. So this is all based on data. Now, if there is no data and if the things are fuzzy and unknown, I also need to understand what I don't know. So we have moved from descriptive to diagnostic to prescriptive to further to cognitive or self-learning analytics, which is aided by artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. So it all based on how much I am willing to invest in terms of my analytics, how much human intervention are required, and what is the call to action. So as I move from descriptive to prescriptive, as you would see subsequently as we talk about the course in a little more granularity, you would see that the degree of human intervention required subsequently gets reduced or minimized as we move across the different levels of data analytics. So it is much more automated, much more decision support based systems as we move on, so we leave no room for any complacency or error as we move across this trajectory. Now, interestingly, there has been a lot of studies which has been done to understand what are the top trends happening in this world of data analytics. So I was just looking at one of the most significant trends which has been published by Gartner, and this actually talks about that the world today, particularly if you look at post-COVID-19 recovery of the global economy, I think there is not much discussion on big data. In reality, there is no data at all, because your customers have not visited the store. Customers might have altogether stopped buying in an apprehension that things would not be so favorable as they were during the pre-COVID times. So there was an element of skepticism, there was an element of a more conservative mindset. So in a situation like this, you don't have much historical data. So you have small data, but you have a much wider data. So what kind of analytical techniques you need to employ when the data is small, it is interspersed across geographies, and you have no known possible optimization, combinatory optimization, or any forms of optimization techniques available at your perusal. So in this course, we'll also try to give you a brief synoptic review with regard to what we can do in terms of our understanding where the things are not clear, they are fuzzy, there are heuristics, and how do we can overcome that with respect to application of more advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. Now, many of you try and maybe would love to ask me, what is this market all about? I'm talking. So data analytics market can be looked at with many different lenses in many different perspectives. So there is one school of thought which believes that the market is essentially subdivided into three categories. They are the hardware market, the software market, and of course the service market. There is another school of thought which believes that the data analytics market can be looked at in terms of the deployment, whether it is an on-premise deployment or it is a deployment on the cloud. And then there is again a school of thought which believes that we can look at the data analytics market in terms of what kind of analytical tools we are using, whether we are using more of dashboarding, more of data visualization, whether we are using more of data warehousing and mining, whether we are using more of self-service tools, whether you are using more of reporting tools. Yet another school of thought believes that is all based on where we are applying data analytics, and that actually is a segmentation of the data analytics market. So we might be using data analytics in a lot of fintech industries. So fintech or financial services analytics can be one. Yes, we can also see that there are other applications of analytics. Maybe we apply analytics in marketing, we apply analytics in human resource and people, we apply analytics in credit and risk assessment, we apply analytics in terms of understanding the pricing architecture of different companies across the world. We apply analytics in terms of our understanding of the value network, supply chain and transportation. We apply analytics in terms of analyzing time and space relationship or spatial analytics. So there are multiple avenues on which we apply analytics. So that's also one possibility. Also, another possibility is we apply analytics in terms of the different industry verticals for which they are meant to be used. For example, it can be applied in the banking and financial services industry. It can be applied in the retail industry. It can be applied in electronic commerce industry. It can be purely an initiative and effort of the government across many nations. It can be applied in the energy and utility industries. It can be applied in the service sector and allied sector. Even you can apply in your own university. It can be applied in education. It can be applied in higher education, in technical education, professional education. So there are multiple filters and lenses on which you can further classify and analyze the market that this data analytics is majorly comprised of. Now, of course, the question comes to our mind is, how big is this market? For any market that we study, I think fundamentally study what is the scale and scope for us if we are trying to make our presence felt in this market. So, a research points out this market in 2020 is close to $190 billion, and this market is growing at little over 10% on a compounded annual growth rate, and the market is poised to grow by around $420 or $421 billion by the time we touch 2027. So a phenomenally significant market which I think we should not ignore. It's of a sizable volume and sizable size. At the same point of time, it's very happening because there is so much of research, so much of development, so much of effort that is, I think, geared across industries, across sectors, across verticals, trying to gauge the importance of these and trying to find out what could be the possible business implications. So I think the definitive question that now is probably coming to your mind is, can you become a data scientist? In fact, that's a very pertinent question because you come from many different backgrounds. Many of you are from different walks of life. So to answer your question, I would like to find out, do you have a love or penchant for mathematics or statistics? Do you actually understand the industry that you are working? It can be advertising, it can be communication industry, it can be the food and beverage industry, it can be any industry, healthcare. Do you possess some amount of domain knowledge and some amount of soft skills in your industry? Do you have a flair for programming or coding or an understanding of how databases work and how they can be managed? Do you love to communicate with people? Do you love looking at different infographics? Do you love visualization? If you have an affirmative response to any of these questions which I have raised, I think this course is for you. And I'm sure as you go through this course, you definitely be immensely benefited in terms of the content, in terms of the coverage, and in terms of what we aspire to lay a foundation for your career. This course is for the learners who are eager to understand the simplicity as well as the beauty of data science. This course is also for those curious people trying to figure out what data science holds in terms of promise for the future. And this course is also for achievers who would like to take data science as a career and would actually love to pursue their passion further. Thank you so much for joining us for this very interesting course on Introduction to Data Science. This is Dr. Ranjan Chaudhary, and I'm happy that I would be your facilitator for this course. Thank you and wish you a pleasant day.